Okay, so these are a little bit, I wouldn't say more complex, but I'm just going to kind of show you, these are good examples of things you can do to just kind of make a simple form. Like this is pretty simple in itself, but what I've done to kind of give it a little more impact is I've kind of added like little bubbles or little bumps and some spikes. So even though they're pretty simple, they kind of added the complexity of the overall piece. So if you're one of those people that's kind of struggles with creativity or coming up with things out of the brain, a good way to start is, we already, all of us know some simple forms. We all know about circles, triangles, squares. We've done enough of these kind of simple blob type forms. So now all you have to do is you can just add little teeny simple forms that you're already familiar with to this. And I like to use stuff like little bumps or little spikes because if you put them close enough together, they kind of read as a texture. So that's basically what texture is. It's just a bunch of simple little lines or bubbles or bumps or spikes, but as an individual, they're pretty simple. But if you put them all together, real close to each other, they read as a cool texture. So just something to keep in mind when you're doing these. If you have problems with creativity, just put little bubbles or small things like that. Okay, so I'm gonna start on this one, then we'll go to that one. So I'm gonna kind of do the same thing that I did. I'm gonna start with my B pencil over here, and I'm gonna kind of determine where my core shadow is. So to me, I think it's right here. It's going to be right here at the point where it sticks out the most. So I'm going to just go ahead and put that in there. It's all right if it goes above it, of course. I'm going to try to leave space down at the bottom for kind of a reflection. Once again, I like to stop at the shape I'm working on, even though without thinking I could just go up to that, but that may be wrong, so I like to work one shape at a time. So let's do this one next. I'm thinking probably the beefiest part of this is almost right at this straight line right here. So that's where my core value. So that's where my core shadow will be. I always forget to leave my reflected light. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is go over to this one and I'm gonna determine where my core shadow is gonna be. So I'm thinking that this actually does probably right in here is kind of where my core shadow is gonna be. So remember, the core shadow, once again, is going to be kind of at the beefiest part of the thing or the form as it starts to curve over. Just think of, if you ever want to know where the core shadow, the darkest spot is going to be right as it starts to curve under. So that's a good way to kind of know where that is. Okay, so I got my core shadows. Okay, so I'm gonna also do the same things to these little teeny bumps. Once again, I'm just kind of thinking of them as, you know, little teeny circles or little teeny bumps. So if our light's coming from the top, it's gonna be kind of, we're gonna have a little core shadow in here. I'm not gonna take a lot of time on these. They would be like this. You know, would have core shadow. So that's essentially how those are gonna work. But they're so tiny. I'm just gonna kind of do the best I can. I mean, I could, even with this delicate of little shapes, if I was gonna draw this and I wanted it to look really great for a portfolio or whatever, I would take the time. But for now, that's what I'm gonna do. And these are gonna have kind of little cast shadows, but we're gonna put those in a minute. So, same thing with our triangles. So, if, you know, we have a triangle and the light's coming from the top, it's gonna kind of still, I want to know if I want to put it kind of right there at the top, the way they're angled. Let me think on those, how I want to do that. Because if I want to kind of, once again, I forget the light source. The light source is from the top. Kind of want to determine, let me think real quick on where I kind of want to put the light. I think I want these to show a little more than if the light's just from the top. So I'm going to actually, before I get too far, I'm just going to switch my light source over just a little so it kind of turns in. And I'm going to go ahead and do them like this. And then I'll give them a core shadow. And then I'm going to still just using my little eraser here, going to erase down the tops. So then I kind of feel like, see it a little better. Otherwise we would have had to go kind of like that. So let's do, I'm gonna put in the core shadows now. And I gotta round it up. Even though it starts flat, my value starts to round, so don't forget that. So once again, the same concept we've been doing. Left a little reflective light, got my core shadow, my halftone, my light value. Okay, so I'm gonna go with this one. Same thing, here's my core shadow. Okay, so I'm gonna do it up here. And be sure that you take time to blend, even though you have the core shadow, it's very small. And then it really blends down in. So it shouldn't just be a blaring line. And there should be definitely value that comes up above it. Just gets real gradual. So make sure you have that in there. Okay, so the next thing, now that I kind of have my basic values in, I'm going to kind of put with these little balls, I'm going to kind of give them little shadows. Now, you wouldn't really see them if it was coming straight from the top, so I kind of adjusted my light source, which wouldn't affect these areas really, but it's going to give me the opportunity to give these little teeny cast shadows, just so they kind of stick out a little more. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is, I kind of want this underneath. So I want this to be an underneath part. So I'm going to, kind of make it darker. But I don't want it to be a sharp edge. And it's way underneath, so it's going to be the darkest part. And since now I want this part to look really round. Well, our light is coming down or kind of coming at this, so it's still not going to hit this very well. So I need to kind of put some on that side. Now, I've decided that I want this, we don't have anything there, it's just kind of hanging out. So we need to decide what needs to go there. So I, once again, want it to be indented, like it's dented down a lot. I want it really dented. Well, maybe not too much. So I'm going to kind of do that. So now it kind of has a little indent, and that's done. So I have a better, nicer one here that's the value shaded a lot better, but we still have the same concept. And I'll post this on our assignments. Okay, so now we have this one. I'm going to move this over a little. Let's see if I can still move it over. Oh, that's okay. So now I'm going to work on this one. This one I've kind of added some funky things. We'll deal with those in a minute, because this is just going to show you really interesting little teeny changes like we did with the bubbles that we can do on this one. But I'm going to start it the same way that I start all the other ones. So I'm going to get my B pencil, and I'm going to determine where, you know, my cast shadow is, and I think it's probably right here. So okay, so there's that shadow. Now, light source, once again, and I like to do the light source from the top a lot of the times. It seems to work best, because lots of times, oh, I guess the right and the left sides work, but if you're just kind of, most of the time we're not in a prominent light source when it's coming from the side because of the sun and because of lamps overhead. So I kind of like to use the light source above because it works a little bit more realistically with life. But you can always make it wherever you want. So this bubble, since it's doesn't, and this is something that's going to be different. So since this doesn't have any curve like a ball, it's more like a triangle that's rounded. It is, but it still has roundness this way. It's going to go, I'll show you. So I'm going to just color it all in except for the top. And since it's going to have like a bump, this is going to be the thickest, meatiest part. So it's going to have a core shadow kind of down the middle. Okay, so now we have this one over here, and this one's kind of interesting. I kind of wanted to do something different with it. Kind of cut off. It should go over that way. But I kind of wanted this to look like it has some wrinkles in it. So what I did was, instead of the edge just being perfect, I kind of put some wrinkles in it. And I will show you how we shade those in just a minute. So these are little wrinkles, and then it's going to curve back around, and it's like a little boat. So it's going to look like that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all of these have a little value. I'm gonna put these in here just so I kind of know what's going on there. Okay, so this one's going to be a little different too because the light is coming down, so it's going to work a lot like that. So my core shadow is going to be more right here. It's going to almost, that's how that one's a little different because of course shadow, that's where it's going to be sticking up the most. So it's the meatiest part, so that's where it's going to go. And it's coming down on it. Then it's going to be light up here where the light hits it. Okay. So I'm going to just kind of stop with that shape. Now I'm going to deal with this shape. So its core shadow is going to be right here. Okay, and so now we have this little teeny tiny shape. Well, the top right here is going to be hitting the sun, so you can have a little teeny core shadow. Right there. Okay, let's put the core shadow. Okay, so now we got to figure, because right here, this kind of looks kind of, I guess, like nothing's going on. So I'm going to take this up. I'm going to make this really dark in here, because I want it to indent. So it's going to go really dark. Then I want it to blend kind of a little bit more gradually. So now we have this. This kind of switches right here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of see if I can zoom in on this. Okay, so I have these little wrinkles right here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. So this is a round wrinkle. So it's essentially just round. So if the light's hitting the top, we're going to have this shadow right here. So it's going to have a little core shadow. Now we go to the next one, which is right here. Well, this one I want it to be more pronounced. I want it to be more of a hard edge. So this top part has the light hitting it. Then we have this part. And then same with this one. The light's hitting this top edge, and I want this one to be real solid. So now we kind of have some different little bends in our thing, like little wrinkles. And now this comes around, so you can see here, it comes around and there's like a little hole. Can you see that? Let's see. So then there's like a little hole in there. So it's the same thing. We still would have our rings, and then we still have, this is our shadow, and then our coarse shadow. So we're still following the same thing, but I want it to be a hole. This is what it would look like if it went all the way through. But since I want it to be a hole, because I feel like it's going to be more contrast if I do that, I'm going to put this side really dark. And so now I have a hole. And I kind of want this side, maybe right here, to look like it has more of a little indent. So now I kind of have that going on. Okay, so we have that. Now I'm going to move on to the rest of this. So I'm going to take my 4B, and I'm going to make this really pretty dark, keeping in mind that I keep a little light area, the reflected light, down at the bottom. Probably not as much here because it's higher up. Now let's put in our cast shadow. Okay, so now we have it filled in a little better. It's a little liney, so I'm going to kind of fix it. Okay, so now we have the basic shape here. All right, so the next thing I want to do, it's obviously a little indented more right here. So what do I want to do? I want to make this part a little darker so it feels like it has a little bit of an indent and depth. I'm going to blend it out a little bit. So now it kind of looks like it is indented a little bit. Okay, so I have this little thing. I actually forgot this. When I did this originally, I actually decided that I wanted a little hole in my, it looked like a submarine. So I'm going to erase this hole and I'm going to put it in there. Okay, so I'm going to put, this is going to be a hole, but everything I do I have to keep in the correct contour. So these edges, it's going to be a hole, but I still have to keep the correct contour. Okay, so I have a nice little hole there. That's going to be a one-dimensional hole. So if there's a vanishing point here, it's going to go all the way through. It's going to be dark in there, so I'm going to go ahead and make it really dark on the side. Really dark back here. And then a little lighter as it comes forward. So now I kind of have a little hole in my submarine or whatever. Okay, now I have this little thing, I don't know what it is. But I put it on there. This is a little off, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So, let me zoom in. Okay, so now we have to figure out what this edge is going to look like. Well, if we were following a vanishing point, we'll probably go straight back, right? But we can't have a straight edge because this whole surface is curved. So we got to think about that. And I wanted to start adding some geometrics into my design, just because we've been doing those too. So what we have to do, instead of a straight line like that, it's got to curve into the shape of our design. Okay, so the next thing is, once again, the light's going to catch the top of this. It's not going to catch hardly anything under there and maybe a little bit here at the bottom. So it's going to be pretty dark here. And then light at the top. And I can just kind of erase a area out. Okay, now what do we do at these sides? Well, this one's the very furthest away from our light source. So it's going to be pretty dark. And it's geometric. This side, it'll still catch some light. It's like our geometrics we were doing. And then here, I'm going to turn this because it's going to be really dark. Underneath, it's going to be super dark. So now we have that. So let's see, I'm going to turn it over, pull it out a little. Okay, so now this right here is going to cause a little tiny bit of a shadow. So just right here, once again, it's going to be in the shape of the thing. So these lines have to curve. So we have a little shadow in there. So now I kind of want to add, on my other one I have this. So I kind of want to add a snake. Let's actually make it bigger. So I'm going to make a big snake type thing. So I'm doing the same thing we did with our snakes. Just kind of applying it now to a different design. So I have to turn this or I can't do it. So now, so everything we kind of been doing, I want us to start applying some different stuff. That's why I put in some geometrics, geometric shapes. And now I'm going to put in this curly Q. Okay, so now I have my little snake person. I'm going to add these so I can see what I'm doing. Oh, you couldn't see them. Okay, so. Okay, so now I have those. Now I'm going to kind of decide where my dark areas need to go. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to go around there. And I'm going to take this. Like that. And then this is probably going to be my core shadow. And then this is a core shadow. And that'll be a core shadow. So I'm just following what we did with our snakes. And then it's obvious it's going to go over here. So that'll be kind of the front of it. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give it a core I'm going to give it a shadow down here. Okay, so now I'm going to start adding the core shadow. Leave some reflected light. Okay, so I have that. Well, now I realize that this is really going to be underneath of our light source because it's at the very bottom. So I'm going to make it a little darker, then it'll gradually get lighter as it goes up here. So this is going to be really dark. Okay, so this is, oh, I want to add these. I have a couple of more little things added. So I want a hole right here. Like it's a submarine with a hole. Yeah, come out, come out, come out. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to make it dark, a dark area. Gradually get a little lighter. And then I'm just going to kind of, like it sticks up a little. It's going to kind of have a ring around it. I have a better version. And up here, I want a large hole. So I'm going to do a circle. It's going to be dark almost the whole way Maybe a little darker over here because it's a back side. But I don't want it a hard edge because maybe I want it the whole kind of blends out a little bit. So now I kind of have like a hole in my submarine or my little thing. Here's the better version. I took a little more time on. And I will post these on Canvas. And that would be it for this video.